Hello, and welcome back to the Brandon and Daryl Experience, or BDE for short. I'm Daryl.
And I'm Brandon.
And today, as mentioned before, we're going to be talking about the movies we've seen this year. So, as you guys know, hiatus, took a long break, a lot of shit has happened. But as well as a lot of shit happening, we've also seen a lot of movies this year. So, we decided to just kind of go through all the different ones we wanted to bring up, wanted to mention, and just talk a little bit about, like, what we've been seeing this year. And, yeah, so I guess we can kind of just jump right into it. So, Brandon, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, and to kick it off, I think at the top of our list we have The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson. Let me just lead off by saying, personally, I wouldn't say my favorite iteration of Batman, but definitely more preferred over the last one of Christian Bale. I mean that in terms of just the Batman aspect, not necessarily Bruce Wayne. Still kind of going back and forth on that, but in terms of Batman's, I don't like the grovelly voice. I thought it just kind of subtracts from the overall, like, movie itself, so that always turned me off. But, like, for the Batman with Robert Pattinson, great crime drama. Like, if you like your, like, Law and Order SVU, if you like your Criminal Minds, if you like CSI, that kind of shows, you're gonna like this movie. And that's why I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's just like that crime drama-esque, like, back and forth, where there's, like, you go to a place, you interview some people, and they're, like, not giving you the information, you go away. There's broody Bruce Wayne just looking at all the clues, like, what are the clues? And then he, like, goes back again. He's like, all right, you're not telling me enough. Give me some more. And then there's, like, there's an awesome action sequence, a single one in particular that we can get into later if you want to. Not sure. Are we doing spoilers? Spoiler free?
Yeah, that's just a top. So, like, I think we should might as well just spoil. So there's gonna be spoilers for all the movies we bring up. So yeah, we could definitely, like, do, like, a quick overview and then just, like, get into spoilers. But if you're jumping into spoilers for Batman, then spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie yet.
Okay, so yeah, spoiler alert. The best action scene, definitely the car chase with the Penguin. Also, Oscar-worthy performance from Colin Farrell. He did great as the Penguin. He's probably the highlight of the movie, if anything. And then I think we're both going to say this. I guess it was on the longer side. I personally don't care about movie lengths being long. Like, this was, like, what, a 2:30, 2:40 runtime?
This was 3 hours.
It was 3 hours? Oh.
Yeah, it was probably like 2:57, 58, but
okay.
3 hours.
Oh, yeah, I got you. Yeah, you could feel the time, but I definitely didn't. I wasn't too bothered by it, but probably the only negative I had about the movie, that, and, like, yeah, that's about it. I like the usage of their they're doing, like, some new technology. What's it called? Where, like, they're in a box essentially, and it's like they use, like, a pre-rendered 3D model. Like, there's some shots in the movie that they look like they're overlooking, like, the skyline of Gotham was actually just, like, a model, like a 3D rendered model. And I think they did for, like, some of the motorcycle scenes too, where they're just, like, driving through. I like that. I think if more movies use that, it looks pretty nice now. I can't wait to see what it looks like in the future. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts, and then we can discuss a little bit more.
Yeah,
Daryl?
I think I definitely agree with pretty much most of what you said. I think the Batman, I thought it was really well made, very interesting, like, crime, mystery, drama, thriller, I guess. A lot of Fincher in this movie. A lot of, like, I guess, like, references to, like, things like Seven or Zodiac. It was very interesting. A lot of great performances. I thought Robert Pattinson was great. I think I probably like his Batman more than Christian Bale's. I do think Colin Farrell's really great in the movie. I think that he's literally unrecognizable. I don't know how they pulled that off with the makeup. Cinematography was immaculate. It's shot by Greg Fraser, who also shot a favorite of mine, a movie that you did not like, which is Dune. It is a very it's very well made from beginning to end, from top to bottom. It's a very well made film. Love the score from Michael Giacchino. Just fantastic film. I think my only my main gripe with it is that it's 3 hours, and I think that like we can get into this a little bit more because there are other movies on this list that this will be something I bring up, but I do think that any movie that is 3 hours or longer needs to be cut down. I just think that like I don't know if any story needs to be told over the course of 3 hours. I think there's very, very few films that I think really deserve that type of runtime. Like I could talk about like maybe some war movies. Schindler's List, I would say, like deserves that runtime. Maybe some classic films deserve it, but for the most part, I just don't really think that. I don't think we need a 3-hour superhero movie. I don't think we need a 3-hour thriller. I just think that type of runtime is not necessary, and especially with a movie like this, where there were times in which I felt like there were things that were happening that were very repetitive. We may get into detail about this, but like one detail in the film it involves like a club. And there's like a thing where it's like, oh, he goes to the club and then he meets these people. And then afterwards somebody tells him like, oh, you went to the club, but you didn't go to the club within the club. So we had to go back to the club. And then we're out of the club. And then we have to go back to the club. And it's like, okay, this is a lot.
Yeah, but that's the crime mystery, like the detective aspect of it all. Like you don't get all the information at once.
Well, true, but I think that after a while it just becomes very I don't want to say stale, but it becomes just too much after a while, for me at least. Okay. Especially from a story perspective, it's like, how many times do we need to keep going to this thing? And I think that I would have appreciated the mystery being a little bit more complicated. I think it's a very simple. I think the whole plot of the movie is very, very simple, but it's told in a way that makes it a little bit more complex. I think it's just like, and I don't know. I think that like there are things about it that I really appreciate, but I think that it could have been a better movie. But as is, it's still good. It's kind of one of those things.
Yeah, I think like from an audience perspective, knowing like basically who the Riddler was immediately, kind of like I don't know. It doesn't keep you on your feet, and it's just like. It's almost like someone like opened your Christmas present for you and you already know what you're getting, and they're just like, but wait till Christmas to actually use the toy. It's like, but I know what it is. It's like, yeah, but you still gotta wait. You gotta wait for Batman to figure out who the Riddler is. It's like, but why? So yeah, and then like that little like Joker like hint. I think that I didn't care for that. Like they're trying to like lead to a sequel. I don't really care for what they're trying to do with the Joker, where he's like actually like maniacally or clinically insane. Like I don't really like the look either, but we'll see if they make a sequel movie. But overall, yeah, it's a pretty like it's a decent movie. Like you'll be happy with it if you liked the other Batman movies.
Yeah, and like I don't want to throw out like the fact that like as far as superhero movies go, it's very rare that we get a superhero movie that does have a lot going on from a crafts perspective. You brought up the VFX. I think the special effects across the board are so well done. I think that like in this movie, Gotham really did feel like its own city as opposed to like the Nolan films, which I do love those movies. You can really tell that like, okay, this was shot in Chicago, this was shot in New York, this was shot wherever. Like you can really tell that it's like, oh, we're shooting this in various places, Pittsburgh, but like in this movie, Gotham really did feel like its own distinct place, and I really appreciated that. And that's something I will always appreciate if a movie can pull that off. And so I really do hope to see more movies, more specifically this genre of film. I really hope to see more, I guess, risks being taken in the future. But I think this is a great step forward as far as that's concerned. So, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I don't have much else to add about the Batman, personally.
One last thing, which I think will help transition us to our next movie, actually. Visual effects, like you mentioned, but the practical effects being, again, Colin Farrell. Okay, if they don't give him an Oscar for like supporting actor, at least give it to the makeup artist. Like, my God, like you said before, he's unrecognizable as the Penguin. Like they didn't he didn't like gain any weight, he didn't do anything. They literally just put on a fat suit and like they did him up to make him look like a completely different person, and like he really sold the performance. But which leads me to the next movie being Men, which in terms of makeup artists, they weren't trying to convince us it was another person, but definitely not. It's not going to be nominated for the Oscars for best makeup or visual effects or whatever.
Not at all.
No,
I think as far as Colin Farrell's concerned, I think his performance is going to be fed into other performances because he does have other movies coming out this year.
Mm-hmm.
But the makeup in Batman, I think, will definitely get some attention. Men is not going to receive any attention. Not that it's a bad movie; it's actually a very good movie. But like,
I'm still deciding. I'm still deciding whether I like it or not.
I came down on. I think it's a good movie.
Okay.
So this is a smaller film. So I guess to explain, so Men is a movie that came out, I believe May 20th, I think, something like that. And it's about a young woman who just recently became a widow. She goes on a vacation in the countryside in England, and she is staying in this house. She meets all these different men, and the thing about the movie is that all the men in the film are played by the same actor, Rory Kinnear. The woman's played by Jessie Buckley. And so as the film goes on, it becomes more and more surreal, and it becomes a movie about her basically, I guess, slowly being, over the course of the film, she is like being harassed by these men, being undermined, disrespected, and as the film goes on, it becomes kind of a weird, not cosmic horror, but it's a horror film.
Biblical.
Yeah, there's a lot of biblical
theological.
This is a very hard film to describe, because even coming out of it, I don't know how exactly to describe this film in a way that would make sense to anybody walking into it.
It's definitely a movie that you have to just watch I wouldn't even say understand, because like you said, like I came out of that not knowing what I just watched. Like you're like, what's the message I was trying to get out of this? What were they trying to say? And like, I mean, I think it boils down to is like, oh, men are like not like there are. It deals with the idealism of like masculinity and like what it means to be a man and how that affects women. I think that's the overarching message, or at least tries to have that narrative. But obviously, there are a lot of more subtleties to it. There's a lot more motifs. There's a bunch of stuff that just like flies over your head, or like you see it and you're like, okay, but how does that connect to my perception of what you're trying to say? And then like I think it just completely blows it out of the water, where you're just like, I don't know how to feel.
Yeah, and I definitely think that this is a movie that maybe deserves more time to be talked about and like broken down. But I think so. This is a film that was written and directed by Alex Garland, who very well known filmmaker. He directed Ex Machina, as well as the film Annihilation, the TV show. Oh shoot, why am I forgetting the name of the TV show? My apologies. It was a TV show that was on FX. So I'm forgetting the name, but if it comes to me, I will shout it out. As well as writing a few films that were directed by Danny Boyle. So that being like 28 weeks later, or 28 days later, rather. The Beach, a plethora of different films. And so this movie, I think is his least accessible, I would argue. I think Ex Machina and Annihilation are both films that have something to grab onto. I think Annihilation is very much a cosmic horror that, even though it may become very complicated in the third act, is a film that you could still kind of grab onto as far as characters and events are concerned. I think Ex Machina is more of a heady movie, but it's still one that you can like understand the characters, understanding motivations, understanding what's going on as far as that's concerned. In this movie, you're not entirely sure that there are any motivations to anything that's happening. Things are kind of just like showing up and happening, and you're just actively confused. At least I was for a large portion of the movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think that like getting into spoilers, where we get into like more detail, the movie takes a very, very dreamlike approach in the way that it tells its story. If I had to say what the movie was about, I guess it's about like masculinity, and specifically toxic masculinity, and how that is passed down over time through like generations. Mm-hmm. But there are things like in the movie, like so Rory Kinnear playing all the different characters, he also plays a child in this movie. He plays a vicar in this movie. He plays a barkeep. He plays the Airbnb host. He's playing all these different types of men, but all of them are taking a different are basically acting as a stand-in for a different type of man, and how their masculinity, in effect, is toxic to the main character, to Jessie Buckley's character. And watching scenes like the vicar basically ask Jessie Buckley if it's her fault that her husband died, like things like that. Things like a child calling her a bitch for not wanting to play hide and seek or some bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of, like, random shit just happens in this movie, and it's very hard to grab onto because you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then, on top of all of that, when you get to the finale, per se, and it's like... Or I should say, like, I guess it is the finale, but, like, the end scene where basically... the Airbnb host becomes, like, basically merges all aspects of himself and these characters, like the child, the vicar, the barkeep, and they manifest into basically the man as like the villain of it all, and then basically becoming almost like a what's it called, like a slasher film at the very end, and it's like just crazy off the walls. But then it really takes a turn, because then it gets to another message, which kind of becomes almost a literal manifestation of the generational hurt, trauma of men, being the birthing scenes of the basically what's it called, those Russian dolls where they just keep popping out one of another, and it just keeps happening, and we're all just like, what is this? What is happening? But then it all leads up to her recently deceased husband coming out, sitting on the couch, all bloody, from being birthed. And it's like, oh, I see now. This is where we're going. And it's like, I don't know. It's the movie. Yeah, I think I'm leaning more towards, like, yes, I like this movie, and I like how creative and out there it is. But like you said, accessibility, definitely not not a movie you can easily recommend to someone where it's like, okay, like it's good, but like, wait.
Yeah. It's not the type of movie that there's a very particular type of person I would ever recommend this movie to. And I think that, like, this movie might be like Mother for me, where, and Mother being the Darren Aronofsky film from 2017 starring Jennifer Lawrence. It might be like that for me, because I think that, like, not that Mother is that complicated. I think Mother is actually pretty straightforward if you really think about it. But I think that, like, in the sense that, like, so much stuff happens over the course of the movie, and to a lot of people it can definitely be offensive and over the top, campy to some extent. It can be very very horrific, but in the case of Men, I think the point that's being made, I think, is very, very interesting. I just think that the way it goes about it is just not something I was expecting, because, especially based on the marketing alone, the movie was very specifically marketed as just like an A24 horror film. So, like, I'm expecting something along the lines of, like, a Hereditary or a Midsommar. But instead,
I wasn't even expecting that. I was expecting, like, almost, like, subtlety, where it's, like, we're expecting something bigger, but it ends up being something so, like, on the nose. So it's like, oh, nice. Yeah. Like, I like that. But no, it is an A24 horror film.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just, like, off the walls.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what exactly I wanted necessarily. I definitely got something different.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think the other part of it is the Alex Garland of it all, because I am a fan of Alex Garland. I'm still trying to think of the name of the TV show, but I did watch it, and it was Devs. The show was called Devs. There we go. It was a very good show, and it was a very interesting, like, science fiction show. And then watching something like Annihilation, I guess based on the imagery that I was seeing in the trailer, I was expecting something more in line with Annihilation. Something that was, like, yes, it was very weird, very, but also something that was very, like, straightforward in terms of, like, what the story and motivations were. But in this movie, it's very much just lady goes to an Airbnb and shit starts happening.
Weird shit.
Yeah, very strange shit. And the birthing scene that you're talking about, and I guess for better clarity, the scene is crazy. I am shocked that I saw that in a theater, to be honest. But basically, so you talked about like the Russian dolls, but it's even more wild than that. Essentially, imagine watching a man give birth to another fully grown man. And then imagine that happening like 5 times. And then imagine it happening not in the same spot, but in different parts of the body. Like at one point, he gives birth out of his ass, and then the next minute he's giving birth out of his back.
Yep, I think. And then his mouth,
out of his mouth.
I think one just split in half, like something like.
Yeah, one I think just came out of the stomach. Honestly, I think one of them did that. Like it happens like 5 times. Until we see the husband. And we didn't really talk about that part of the story. We learned that the husband, well, it's ambiguous on whether or not he committed suicide or if he fell. But him and Jessie Buckley had a huge fight that ended in him slapping Jessie Buckley. She kicks him out, and then the way she tells it, he had gone to the flat of a neighbor upstairs and was trying to climb down to their apartment onto the balcony, but she doesn't know if he had slipped and fell or if he committed suicide. And especially is ambiguous because there's a scene where she threatens to leave him and he threatens to commit suicide to make her feel bad. So we don't know which it is that happened, but we see him, he falls, he dies. We see the way that his body is mangled on the ground when he died. And over the course of the movie, slowly, the bits and pieces of, like, her husband start to come through these characters where, like, a character's arm is cut in the same way that the mangled body of her dead husband was in the film. And, and we see the ways in which these people start to go from being, like, 7 different people to being one person. It's wild. It's quite insane.
Yeah, and the one scene that actually makes the least amount of sense in my head is at the very end when her friend finally shows up. Like, why did it take her so long? Did any of this really happen? Like, well,
that's the question I was left with as well.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was supposed to be, because to some extent, her friend showing up kind of confirms the events of the movie. Because, like, you could kind of chalk up the whole entire movie. If that wasn't there, you could probably chalk it up to, like, oh, this is all happening in her head. But we do see, like, certain things like damage on the property that would suggest that this stuff actually did happen.
Yeah, but it was all damage. It was all damage that she caused, I'm pretty sure.
Which, yes, but it still begs the question of, like, why did she cause that damage? Why is she still covered in, like, again, I think, I could be wrong, but I think that she still had, like, blood on her.
Possibly, yeah.
Like, there's, like, a lot of details that would suggest that this stuff actually happened. And if she did all that stuff, then, like, why did that occur? It becomes the question. So it leaves it very ambiguous, but in a way that kind of leans more towards one answer than the other. But it's still kind of vague and kind of unclear.
Yeah.
But yeah. And this is definitely a movie that would deserve its own analysis. But sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, for sure. No, I was just gonna lead us into the next topic, being her friend was also pregnant. With what? A baby. And what's the connection I'm trying to make? There's also a baby in the next movie who grew up. He's Baby Goose. Top Gun Maverick.
I thought you were gonna get into the thing because you had a theory in Men that, like, oh, she cheated. She was sleeping with her husband.
I mean, it's a reasonable theory, like, why she didn't show up in time, and, like, she's just dealing with the grief, and, like, maybe she kind of realized it all at the end of it, and, like, it was a wild theory, but it's something that's, like, worth thinking about. Just like, oh, we never knew she was pregnant, like, at all during the whole movie, and then all of a sudden she shows up and she happens to be pregnant, which also corresponds with, like, the whole birthing scene being her husband.
That's a fair point. I kind of lean more towards, like, the idea that, like, there's, like, hope there. The idea that maybe these women will be able to break the cycle of toxic masculinity. But it could also be, because I guess, like, mine's more of like a metaphorical, like, ooh, maybe, but yours is more of, like, a literal, like, she's fucking her husband. So, I mean, I don't know. It could be either or. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be how the fear of it being another man. Like, she's pregnant, but it's like, ooh, is that going to result in another one of my husbands?
Could you imagine if we got to see like a few more seconds? Because at the end of the movie we see Jessie Buckley sitting on the stairs. And sorry, we're gonna get to the next film in just a second. But when she's sitting on the stairs and she looks at her and she smiles, could you imagine if instead of her smiling, she just has like a look of horror on her face and is just like, "No, get that away from me!
Get out of here! We're going to a clinic now." But it's a girl. I don't care anymore if we don't know for sure.
If we don't know for sure, we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Gosh. Okay, yeah, so Men, weird one, but I liked it. I don't know. Overall, I guess I liked it. So, yeah, I guess, with Baby Goose, we're getting into Top Gun Maverick. Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. We had a quick issue with our, communications. But, yeah. Now we're gonna talk about Top Gun. Because apparently... I don't know.
Because Miles Teller is hot, apparently. That shimmy was all that we needed in 2022.
I find it very hilarious that just, like, happened out of nowhere because, like, back, like, how many years ago was, like, Whiplash? No one was talking about Miles Teller like that.
And they're like, wow, Oscar-worthy performance? Who cares? Wait, he has a six-pack now? I'm all in. And a mustache?
Exactly.
Even better.
But yeah, Top Gun. So we did not see this movie together. Did you get a chance to see it?
I've never seen it. I haven't even seen the first one.
Oh, okay. So I guess so I just saw the first one for the first time. Like, I want to say like 2 weeks before Top Gun Maverick came out. Okay. I can understand how people are very nostalgic for that film, especially considering that like it was the 80s. At this point now, I guess 80s culture is like the main thing now with like things like Stranger Things and a whole plethora of different media. And like now, people who came of age in the 80s, they're very much like adult. They're very much like kind of like the leaders in various spaces in media, especially like now they're like 40s, 50s, you know. Now, with that being said, the first Top Gun, that movie is nearly incomprehensible. I don't understand. I don't know if I would. It was entertaining, but like, is it good? I don't know. Actually, I don't know if it's a good movie. It's a lot of just like shit happening. Like maybe I should give it a rewatch. I don't know, but it's like, oh, you guys are dangerous, but we are gonna send you to Top Gun, and it's like, oh, okay. So Top Gun is like, it's like a fighter pilot school. It's like a very, very prestigious fighter pilot school, essentially. They go there, but on like the first day, Tom Cruise is like hanging out at a bar, and he meets Kelly McGillis, and Kelly McGillis, she's like they're like flirting with one another or whatever, but like she turns him down, and then later the next day we find out that she's his teacher.
Oh,
at Top Gun. And then they start fucking. They get together in the movie. So I'm like, that's not ethical. And then,
well, at least he's passing with flying colors.
Jesus Christ. But then, there's a whole thing about like Goose. So Goose is like Tom Cruise's best friend. This movie is extremely homoerotic, by the way.
No,
there's a lot of
that's the only thing I know about this movie because of Quentin Tarantino's breakdown, where he's like, "Oh yeah, they're all gay," and that like Tom Cruise only likes Kelly McGillis's character more after she becomes more butch. It's like, oh,
it's really funny because like the movie. And that's hilarious. I actually didn't hear that thing, but that's
no.
Hilarious.
I can send you it later. It's actually really funny.
Okay, I need to see that. But like in the movie, there's like a lot of scenes of like them hanging out in their towels in a locker room, them playing volleyball, and it's just like so because the way the camera is leering on them is insane. And then on top of that, like so Goose dies in this movie. Goose, Tom Cruise's best friend in the movie, he dies, and he died in like an accident during, I guess, a test flight or something along those lines. And then all of a sudden a war breaks out. So Tom Cruise has to fight in this war with some nondescript villains, and like they're fighting and they win, and that's Top Gun. I really don't understand.
Interesting. I have to see. I have to see it now just for this description alone.
Yeah, it's not my type of movie already to begin with, but like the actual story that's being told, I did not care. And as it was going along, I was just like, what is going on? Like, why are we playing volleyball right now? Why are they all in locker rooms right now? What is going on? Why are we getting a scene where him and Kelly McGillis are fucking and she's his teacher? What is happening in this movie? And then, like, oh, Goose died? What?
I feel like they're pandering towards a certain audience of the 80s.
Well, I mean, the movie is very interesting because it seems very, like, rah America, which is very interesting for the, because in the 80s, that probably wasn't something that people, like, focused on at all. But now we'd look at that and be like, propaganda. Which is something that was brought up with Top Gun Maverick, like whether or not it would be weird having a movie like that in 2022, because most people, especially our generation now, would look at that and be like, that's bullshit. That's, like, propaganda, and I don't like that. Now, with all that being said, Top Gun Maverick was really good. It's so much better than the original film. It actually has a plot.
That's a plot.
There's stakes. There's a story. I think it's not... I'm not one of those people who's like, Top Gun Maverick is the best movie ever, because there are a lot of people out there.
Wait, really?
Like, it was good, but I mean... Yeah, no, a lot of people fucking love this movie. Like, they think it's, like, the best film, not only of the year, but, like, the best film in the past, like, several years, as far as, like, popcorn filmmaking goes.
Okay, there.
And I disagree. I think that the film was really good, but, like, it's not, as far as Tom Cruise's filmography, it's not Mission Impossible, which I think is his opus. I think Mission Impossible is so much better. But with that being said, if you don't know the plot of Top Gun Maverick, even though it made like $1 billion or some bullshit, basically the movie is about Tom Cruise playing character name that I'm forgetting right now for reasons, my bad. Maverick. It's in the title. So Tom Cruise is Maverick, and basically, he is pushing 60 or 40. I don't know about the ages in this movie. That's the part that's confusing. But regardless, basically, he's still a flyer. He's still very dangerous, very reckless. He is supposed to be in like a leadership role, but ultimately loves being like on the ground. He loves to be like in the ship, essentially. And it's been a minute since I've seen the movie, so please bear with me as I'm trying to describe what was happening. But essentially, he is asked to be the lead of Top Gun. He's asked to be the teacher, as you will. And so he takes on a new team. One of the students this year in the film is Miles Teller's character, who plays Goose's son. He basically has resentment against Tom Cruise because Tom Cruise had pulled his papers when he originally tried to get into the military. And the reason for that was because Meg Ryan, who's not in this movie, but Meg Ryan plays his mother in the original Top Gun. She wanted him to pull the papers because she did not want for Miles Teller she didn't want what happened to Goose happened to Miles Teller, if I'm saying that correctly.
No,
she did not want to see her son die similarly to how she had to see Goose die. And so as the film progresses, we basically learn that there is a major mission that they have to accomplish involving a very, very, basically, as they put it, nearly impossible task of essentially bombing a nuclear arms facility in some nondescript country against some nondescript villains. I'm not joking. We do not see a single villain's face in this movie. It's just someone flying a plane and we don't know who it is. Flying planes and we don't know who they are. Like, they never say, like, oh, we have to fight no, they don't say anything. We do not know who these people are.
It's like a car situation. The plane is just actually an animated living thing.
That would be hilarious, but it's not even that because it's just insane. But as the movie progresses, basically, people are figuring this shit out. There's a whole subplot involving Jennifer Connelly, who plays Tom Cruise's, like, ex-girlfriend from way back when, who was brought up in, like, one sentence in the original Top Gun. And as the movie goes along, it's basically just a vehicle to watch Tom Cruise do a bunch of crazy stunts for 2 hours. And those stunts are actually amazing. Like it's really cool watching it because like they do some crazy shit with the planes in this movie. Tom Cruise as well as the cast actually learned how to fly for a lot of the scenes of the movie.
Oh, that's crazy.
They're doing, most of them are doing their own stunts, and it's actually it's insane. They had to fly at some crazy speeds. There's a whole plot point about how, in order to escape without like dying, essentially, they have to fly at some sort of crazy speed, but they have to fly at that crazy speed like inverted. And if they basically, what makes that so difficult is that the speed is so fast that there's a potential that they could pass out from it because the G's are so high. I don't remember what the speed was, but it's like something insane.
They filmed it like at that speed.
No, I don't think they actually flew at that speed because that would be hella dangerous. But the actors actually like acted that out. I don't know. I would have to look into the details of like the stunt work in this movie. But like I know for a fact that like they did actually fly some of the planes. But I don't know if the actors were actually being flown at those speeds to pass out or if that was just all for if that was them acting. I have no idea. But it gets crazy. It gets wild.
Can you imagine being an actor like and you did that stunt and you put that on your resume, but then you have to go into like the real world again, so you're like back at like some like 9-to-5 job, and you're like, okay, so like what's like the hardest thing you've had to do in your career? And you're like, well, I had to fly a jet. It's like, and you were an actor. Yes, yes, I was. And you flew a jet.
But this is what's crazy about Tom Cruise. All of his movies, he always wants to do his own stunts, and all of his stunts are fucking wild. Like in, I don't know if you've seen Mission Impossible.
The hanging off the plane.
Fallout.
Yeah.
Well, that happens in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. In Fallout, he actually flies the helicopter in the movie, and if you see what's going on in the movie, there are scenes where, like, he's flying a helicopter to chase down the bad guy, and he's, like, flipping the helicopter around and crashing it intentionally into other helicopters. Obviously, there's CG involved, but, like, there's a lot of shit that he's doing. There's a scene where he's dangling at the bottom of one of the helicopters, and he is climbing up a rope, because basically the helicopter has like a load on it. He's climbing up the rope to get to the top to get to the main cockpit of the helicopter. And as he's climbing, at one point he falls and then catches onto the load at the bottom of the helicopter. And Tom Cruise actually like did that. And I'm like, are you trying to die on film? Like it's actually kind of insane to me, like what he's willing to do for cinema. It's wild to me.
I think he's just a Dos Equis man. The most interesting man in the world.
Fair point.
But it's combined with the luckiest man in the world, because it's like how those stunts give me a heart attack.
It's just insane how much he is able to pull off in these movies, and especially for his age. I think I wouldn't be that like enamored by it if he was like 30, but he's 60, and it's wild that he's still doing this shit. So yeah. I have to give it to him. With that being said, I think Top Gun Maverick is a very good film. I think it's one that to watch. It's for sure entertaining, but it's not like, I don't think it's like the best movie ever. It is in my top 10 for the year, but that's mainly because of the experience, because I did see it in 4DX.
Oh, so you were flying the plane again, too.
Yeah. No, if it was playing it's easily my favorite movie that I've seen in 4DX. Like, not in terms of the movie's quality, but in terms of like the experience. Like being in those seats as like the planes are like flying and like being shook around and stuff like that. It's really fun. So I'll give it that. But yeah. That's Top Gun Maverick.
And from most people's favorite movie to one of our friends' favorite movie of the year.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I'm actually going to rush. I don't want to rush if you don't want to rush, but I think these two movies can be kind of, they're very formulaic and
we can talk
they're
about them
very formulaic in nature. But the one that I just mentioned was Doctor Strange in Multiverse of Madness. I too am feeling the Marvel fatigue now. Yes. And I'm someone who loves the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love the comics, I love everything. And even I too am feeling the fatigue, and especially in comparison to another movie on this list, this is not the multiverse movie that I was expecting, and it's not the one that I got. It's just a solid. It's a 7 out of 10. I don't know if we want to talk about it more. It's stuff happens in it. It makes you question some things.
Well, the next two movies I think we could talk about like at the same time. Honestly, because I think that I have a lot of the same issues with them.
Yeah, no, I think for both of these movies, they both succeed in the sense that they are their director's films. So Sam Raimi, Doctor Strange, Multiverse, like that is a Sam Raimi film. I loved his his flavor and his touches in the editing style and the directorialship, like how it basically felt like a horror film, how there was like suspense involved, the Raimi shots, the collaboration with Danny Elfman, obviously, with the score. But yeah, it was a movie. It was a Marvel movie. Yeah. It was fine. And then the next one being Thor: Love and Thunder. Definitely Taika Waititi movie. Like definitely even more so than I would say Ragnarok. Like full on focusing on the comedic writing, which I appreciated. Like it was a very funny movie. With Thor: Love and Thunder, it's definitely a Taika Waititi movie. Like even more so than Thor: Ragnarok, as I was saying. It's all within the comedic writing of the movie. I think they did a great job in that. I really thoroughly enjoyed the comedy moments. I thought it was funny. But other than that, I can't really praise it for much else. There is a lot of questionable movie choices like that made me laugh. I think it was purposeful, but like for what they were trying to do, it was kind of hard to see what the focus was for the Thor: Love and Thunder, where it's like they're trying to make it a familial like love story, kind of like a rom-com in a sense, but it didn't play out to the best of it all, and it was kind of corny, but again, it was a fun movie. I'll say it was fun. Same with Doctor Strange, it was a fun movie, but like it's more so just a popcorn eating movie, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think so. I've also been feeling the Marvel fatigue, but I've been feeling it since probably Infinity War. I felt it well before we even finished the first, I guess the first 2 or 3 phases of Marvel. I think Marvel movies are like, they're fun entertainment for sure. I just think that like, there was a time in which watching a superhero movie felt like something interesting and something different. Like back in the 2000s, watching an X-Men movie or watching Spider-Man to me felt like, oh yes, I get to watch this movie. And then meanwhile, a whole bunch of other movies that would come out are like not really in that space. There would just be a whole bunch of different things that are coming out. But now I just feel like superhero movies specifically have like such a chokehold on the box office, on basically the movie industry as a whole, where like you see a bunch of filmmakers basically being dragged into these various genres and getting a chance to do this work, but with material that may or may not fit them. Now with Multiverse of Madness, I like it more than Thor: Love and Thunder. I appreciate, basically the way I put it is that if Sam Raimi didn't direct it, the movie would be ass. The movie would be hot garbage, and I think that Sam Raimi, what he was able to do is he was given at least a little bit of enough of the space to do his own thing. Now, I think the worst part of Multiverse of Madness is easily when it dips into the Marvel of it all. When it starts to get into like, ooh, here's Mr. Fantastic. I hated all of that. I hated it so much. And when they all died, I was like, thank you. I did not care at all. I was just so like, I rolled my eyes so hard. I was just not in the mood. Dang. I hated it. And so when we actually got away from that and we got to see things like, probably some of my favorite imagery had to do with Wanda. I think that she's the best part of the movie. Having to do with like the scene where she exits the mirror dimension by climbing through the gong. I thought that was amazing. I loved them jumping through the various multiverses, and we get to see them passing through all these different multiverses in slow motion. I thought that was a really cool shot. I loved the stuff in the third act where Doctor Strange basically becomes has to control a zombie and then control the souls of the damned as a cape and all this other, like, it was wild that he was able to get that type of stuff into the movie. And I really appreciated that. But like overall though, I think that as a movie, as a story being told, it falls into that same problem I have with all these goddamn Marvel movies, which is that they're not movies, they're commercials for other movies. And with Thor: Love and Thunder, that especially felt like the case because the movie story didn't do anything. It really did not do anything, at least for me. I felt like the whole movie was just like setting up like, ooh, now we have Eternity here, and oh, now Zeus is a character, and guess what? We're gonna fight Hercules. Like, I just didn't care. And so like, and then when we get to characters like Jane, who to me kind of felt like a completely different character from the first two movies, first two movies, because Ragnarok's the third one. I think that idea was really enticing to me, but what they did with it didn't do anything for me, because they didn't do anything with it. Because it was just like, oh wow, she's Lady Thor. Do we get to see her fight? Not really. We get one scene. We get one scene, and then I guess the third act, and that's it. And then like all these children are fighting now, and I just thought it was just too much. And I think that I like Taika Waititi. I do. I think some people think that he's like a really annoying filmmaker. I think some people think that he like doesn't care about these movies, which I do kind of agree. I don't think he cares about these movies anymore. Especially like watching interviews with him, and he's like, yeah, we were just having a good time. I'm like, I don't blame him, because honestly, I wouldn't care either. But like, yeah, I think of the two, I think Multiverse of Madness is the better film, but like, I would give Multiverse like maybe like 6.5 out of 10. It was fine. Thor: Love and Thunder, I'd probably give like a 5, more or less.
I understand your ratings.
Because Christian Bale was really good in Love and Thunder. I didn't bring him up, but he's usually the best part of the movie. But he's in a wildly different movie, and the movie that he was in was the one I wanted to see. Yeah.
Fair, yeah.
Okay, so we knocked those out. So I guess moving it from Disney Marvel to Disney Pixar, we have Turning Red. One of my favorite movies of the year. I loved this movie. It is, I think on my list is my number 2. Yeah, it's my number 2 movie of the year. It is, if you haven't got a chance to see it, it's a movie about a young girl, a young Chinese-Canadian girl who is coming of age. She is 13, and basically one day she wakes up and finds that she has turned into a giant red panda. And we learn that this is a magical trait that was passed down to them from her ancestors. Her mother dealt with it, her grandmother dealt with it, her aunts dealt with it, and so basically now she has to, I guess, balance her panda, and a lot of that has to do with like her emotions, the way that she decides to control how she feels about certain things. And I think that what I loved so much about this movie is that I felt like it very much was super low stakes in a way that I kind of appreciated. It's not a movie where it's like, ooh, she's turned into a red panda, but there's some sort of evil villain who's trying to steal her powers and like take over the world. Like, it's not all that. It's literally just, she's a red panda. How does she deal with that as a teenage girl who's growing up? And like how it kind of related back to like how she is growing up and how her parents, specifically her mother, how basically her growing up affects the relationship she has with her mother. And I think that it was a very, very interesting story. I thought it was very well told. This is a movie that, and I'm not joking when I say this, I think that Domee Shi, the director of the film, I would love to see her get award recognition, specifically outside of the animated feature category. Like, I would love a screenplay nomination, or even, honestly, a director nomination. I think that, like, that's not something that ever happens, that a director of an animated film gets a director nomination. But, like, if she got a director nomination for this film, I think that'd be amazing, because I think that she, unlike a lot of other Pixar filmmakers, she actually was able to inject a certain style that was really fresh with the Pixar formula. I think that most Pixar has been very much about trying to make everything photorealistic, trying to achieve this level of realism that goes beyond animation, and basically blurs the line between animation and reality. But this movie wasn't trying to do that. It was literally just a mix of different animation styles. Like, there's very much an anime influence to the film. There is a lot of, like, very, very expressive animation. And I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I love this film.
You know, I completely share the same sentiments as you. I just love the messaging of, like, the generational trauma and how basically they overcame it. And although that may be actually more fantasy than reality, because not many people can say they overcome their generational trauma with their parents,
Yeah.
especially within Asian households, because it's just how it is. But I really appreciate how it's almost how someone could live that fantasy and how something could come about that where there's just a different language being spoken. And I don't mean that in the sense of like physical language, but like a love language where her mother is like the stereotypical like tiger mom, where it's like overbearing, really cares about her daughter, wants her to succeed, but she does it in the most like in your face way possible, where like she's literally showing up to school like worrying about her daughter, like thinking that she forgot pads because she thinks that she's going through having her first period as opposed to turning into a giant red panda. But like being almost like being shooed away from the school, from the like the groundskeep, and she's like, no, I have a right to be here. It's like she's like peeking through the window. But like it just goes to show that like I think it's the broader message too, being like our parents care, or like maybe our mother cares, but like there's just a different barrier, especially even like the generation, especially for music, where it's like May really wants to go watch what's the group called? Oh my goodness,
Town.
It's such a big point. Yeah, it's Four Town. How she's like, oh, I really want to go see this concert, and it's like, what? You want to see boys?
Yeah.
Like, no. Like, you should be staying at home, studying, and keep doing the great things
Why
you're already
is their name
doing.
Four Town
Keep
if there's
getting
5 of them? I don't know why. I love that joke. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, because aren't they like twins
No,
or
I
something?
don't even know. It was just like there's 5 of them, but they're
I think
Four
there's-
Town. I don't know.
I think one of them is like a twin, so like they're like counting 2 people as one. They're like, yeah, this is the same person. Which really that brings me back to like I really love the score. Like Phineas, Billie Eilish's brother, great job. He killed it, writing the songs and like doing the whole production and whatnot.
and
like really felt like a boy band in the early 2000s. Like it was like, yep, I would listen to them if I was a kid, like in that age.
Yeah, the music, the Four Town like songs are really good. And like I think he did an amazing job on that. And I think they both worked on it, actually. I think both Phineas and Billy worked on the music. But then also the actual like musical score was done by Ludwig Göransson, who's slowly becoming one of my favorite composers.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He did the score for Tenet. He won the Oscar for his score for Black Panther, and I love his work. He's also a music producer. He worked a lot with Childish Gambino, and like his music for this film, I listen to it all the time. It's so good. It's so well done. And yeah, I think this is just one of those movies that like, I think that there's just so much going on in terms of like the family dynamic in the movie, and also like the friends, who I think are really funny and really interesting. And like you could definitely see how like in some movies, like there is this thing that happens where like the main character has to learn some sort of message, but the way the friends are depicted, it's like, oh, they're actually terrible. Like, I think of, like, even though this has nothing to do with this movie, I think of something like Devil Wears Prada, where in The Devil Wears Prada, great movie, by the way, the movie, when you're younger, like, the movie, the way the movie is, like, the messaging happens, you're thinking, like, oh, the friends are right, like, you're changing, you're doing X, Y, Z. But then when you watch the movie again, like, as an adult, you realize, oh, the friends are villains. They are awful. They are the worst. And in this movie, like these girls actually feel like a close-knit friend group in a way that I thought was really interesting, because I don't think that many films like really pull that off without you like really asking questions. And I really appreciate that. And it's very funny because this is a movie that ultimately climaxes in a giant red panda fight where the mom is a red panda the size of the fucking Empire State Building or some shit. And she's
the dad was hilarious when he was
I told you she was big. He's that big? Like what? But yeah, no, this, even though it does have like those things about it, it still comes together in a really great way. And I will be honest, I cried.
I can't say the same. I'm notorious for not crying during movies. I have no heart, no soul.
Yeah.
But yes.
It's fantastic.
Great movie.
Okay. So Turning Red, watch it.
I will.
So
Yes. the next 6 movies, it's
Okay.
all you. I've not seen a single one
Saw
of these.
Bodies.
Oh wait, okay. So I've seen that one, but the next 5 movies I have not seen.
Okay, so we'll start with Watcher. So this is a small indie horror movie. I'm just gonna go through this really quick because there's not too much to like really delve into, I guess. But Watcher, I really want to bring it up because it is a smaller indie film. I watched it like a few weeks ago, and it's basically about a young woman who moves to, oh shit, I'm forgetting what country she moves to. I believe it's a part of Germany. I could be wrong, but she moves to a new country with her husband, who doesn't know the language of that country, but she ultimately feels isolated because she doesn't know the language. And over the course of the film, she begins to believe that she is being stalked by a neighbor of theirs. And the whole movie is basically her like trying to determine whether or not she's being stalked. There's also a subplot involving there being a potential serial killer in the area who had murdered who is murdering women, specifically decapitating women in this film. And so she basically has this deep-seated paranoia about being stalked and watched by someone who she doesn't know. And the film it does kind of play that thing of like, this woman is describing an experience that she's having, but no one believes her. But it's actually really, really well done. The movie stars Micah Monroe, who you may know from films like It Follows, and she gives an amazing performance. I think it's one of the best performances of the year. She is so good in this movie. I really loved everything that she was doing. And I think this is a film it is a slow burn, and it does have an ending that you could say is very, is kind of a different tone from the rest of the movie, because so much of the movie is ambiguous, and the ending kind of puts a button on everything. But I think that the movie is really, really well made. The performances are very strong. And I can't wait to watch it again. And I said before, Brandon, you're watching this movie at some point. I'm telling you right now. It's currently on Shudder. I think it just premiered on Shudder, so definitely one to check out. The next one is one that many people love, and I'm just going to quickfire it, but like many people love this movie. RRR. So RRR, if you don't know, is a Tollywood film about 2 men who ultimately become best friends, but turns out they are on two opposing sides, or at least so we believe, 2 opposing sides of essentially a political warfare. We meet these 2 men. I'm trying to remember the names of the characters, so my apologies. But for the most part, the lead of the film is a man named Raju. And Raju, if I remember correctly, is he is essentially a part of the British military. He is a police officer. The movie takes place during the British occupation of India. And basically, the whole film revolves around a young girl that was stolen from a small tribe and a small community, and it is essentially trying to be saved by, because I can't remember the exact name of the character, essentially a spy. And he's a freedom fighter, and he's trying to save this young girl from the British, who's basically keeping her as a pet. And then Raju, who is that police officer, after a ridiculous, over-the-top scene where they save a child from burning to death in water, or there's like an oil spill and then everything's on fire. So they try to save this child by using a flag, a motorcycle, a horse, and a rope. It's insane. They become best friends, and the whole movie is very bro-y. It's very much like a bro film. Like these 2 characters like have like serious bro love for each other. And then over the course of the film, they basically begin to learn more about their motivations, learn more about who they actually are, what their place is in this overall grander war that is happening. It's a very, very good film, very well made, very well acted. Everyone is top tier in the movie. I mean, you could argue that all the British actors are really bad in it, but I feel like that's kind of the point. I feel like that's kind of the point of the film. But it's a great film. My only complaint, and I know that this is going to sound very like, my only complaint, as I said before, this is a 3-hour film. Didn't need to be 3 hours. It didn't need to be 3 hours. I'm sorry, it did not need to be 3 hours. I think it's very fun. It's very fast paced. So like the 3 hours don't feel like overly long, but it is a film that to me could be cut down just a little bit. Even if it was like 240, I think that would be better. I just think 3 hours is just excessive. But I do think this is a great film. It's also a musical. So there's that.
Oh.
It's a musical action film, and we love that. So it's great. It's a great movie. It's great. It's wild, but it's great.
Les Mis on crack.
Okay, so next we have Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Bodies. We're playing this. We're gonna play this game, Daryl.
Yeah, we definitely should play this game because this movie is so funny. This is one of my favorite comedies of the year. This is so funny. So basic premise: a group of friends, a group of rich friends specifically, get together to at a pool party get together at like someone's house. They have a pool. They're having a pool party at first, but then there's actually going to be a hurricane coming through, and so they're all hanging out at their rich friend's house during a hurricane, and they decide to play a game called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And then while playing the game, during this whole storm, one of their friends they end up finding dead or dying, but dead. And the rest of the film is these girls and like this group of friends trying to figure out who is the killer. And it is so funny. So this movie does have like tension. It is tense in some spots.
Oh,
but it's so funny. I was just dying the whole time. The film has a pretty stacked cast. I think the highlights of the film are definitely Amandla Stenberg, who plays the main character whose name is... Do you remember? I should have looked up all the characters' names, but I'm forgetting.
Is it...
So B is played by Maria Bakalova, who is Amandla Stenberg's girlfriend in the movie. Amandla Stenberg plays a character named...
I forget her name
too. Okay, we'll just call them by the actors' names because we're forgetting the characters' names. But definitely the highlight of the movie for me was Rachel Sennett. Rachel Sennett plays...
Oh, yeah.
Oh my god, her character is so funny. The shit she says is wild to me. And I just laugh so hard. Like, there's a scene where Maria Bakalova's character explains that her mother was going through like a hard time and she had to help her mother. I guess her mother was sick. So she had to help her mother with a bunch of stuff. She had to drop out of college because of it. And then Rachel Sennett tries to be, like, understanding and helpful. But what she says is like, no, like, I get it. Like, mental health is, like, really important. Like, I've never told anybody this, but I have body dysmorphia. And I don't know why I died I was laughing so hard. Because, like, it's just so, like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then, at one point, she goes off on somebody. And then the insult she says is, your family is upper middle class. I lost it. I just lost it. Oh god, it's so funny. There's so many great like one-liners and so many great like lines. I think if you watch the trailer, there are a lot of like lines that are cut out like, "Oh, you guys fucking trigger me," or like, "Stop, you're silencing me," or like, another line from Rachel Sennett. What did she say? She said he's a Virgo moon. What did she say? She said something wild like that. It was so funny.
Yeah.
Oh no, he's an Aries moon.
Yeah.
It was like, what are you? And they're like, so you don't know him?
He would never do that. What's his middle name? That's not something you would know.
My God. And so I guess, do we want to spoil this movie?
Ooh.
Because the twist at the end of the movie, it makes it so much funnier. It turns it into a direct comedy.
You don't see it coming.
It comes out of nowhere. Gosh. Like, I want to, but I think I'm going to leave it up to
that's one movie we won't spoil for him.
Definitely worth a watch. It's so good. It's so funny. It's so fun. So yeah, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. I think I gave it like an 8.5 out of 10. on my Letterboxd, which you can see all my ratings for these movies on Letterboxd. But yeah, this one is on my top 10. It is number 7 on my top 10.
Hey, it's solid.
Very good. It's a very good film. So there's that. The next one is another movie that's on my top 10. It's actually number 8 on my top 10. Is X. So, Brendan, you have not seen X, right? Okay, another one I'm going to show you for sure. But you know of the sequel that's coming out called Pearl.
Oh.
That is the sequel to this film, or the prequel to this film.
Okay, I'll be interested in it then,
so
for sure.
X is basically, it's a horror film that's very much a love letter to like 70s slasher horror, like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre specifically. The film stars Mia Goth, Mia Goth as a woman who is a porn star. Her and a group of porn actors, as well as some crew, get together and go on a road trip to stay at an old like farmhouse, basically in the middle of nowhere. The farmhouse is owned by an old man and an old woman. The old woman being Pearl, hence the prequel aspect of the film. And the movie becomes a slasher film where these porn actors are being killed off one by one by these older people. And the movie, it would just be simply like a dumb slasher horror, which is perfectly fine. That's all I was expecting going into it. But instead, it becomes a movie about youth and about what it means to be young and what it means to want to do something with your life to a certain extent. And it also becomes about, like, there is a lot of like religious stuff going on in the film. We learn, and I will get into spoilers with this film. Still watch it. Definitely, like, the experience of watching it will do more for you than just listening to me talk about it. But essentially, depending on whether or not you like these types of films, but essentially, we learn about, like, the characters, and one of the big, like, twists of the film is that throughout the movie there is a pastor on TV giving a sermon about basically how, like, sex and drugs are corrupting the youth. And we learn later that Mia Goth's character is that pastor's daughter. And as he puts it, she had been corrupted by drugs and sex and had run away. And throughout the film, we understand that her character, she really wants to become a star. She wants to become, like, super well known. She wants to become, like, a real actor and, like, all this other stuff. And so the movie begins to become about, like, how essentially people find this jealousy in the way that these people decide to live their lives. And there's a scene where Brittany Snow's character, she basically starts talking about how basically it's not their fault that, like, they make other people horny. Like, we only live, she says something along those lines, but she basically talks about how, like, we only live one life, we only get to be young once, so why not live it up while we have that time? Because soon enough, we're going to be old, and we're not going to be able to do any of the stuff that we do now. So if anybody wants to judge us for that, fuck them. Like, we're going to live our lives the way we want to live them. And that becomes almost like a weird motivator for Pearl's murderous actions throughout the movie. And yeah, it's very, very good. It was a movie that, like, when I first watched it, I was like, that was fine. It was okay. I didn't think it was as crazy as people were saying, but on a rewatch, I really appreciated what the movie was going for, and it was actually doing more than I really was expecting at all. Also, fun fact, so Mia Goth, who plays the main character in X, she also plays the main character in Pearl, because she is playing the old version of Pearl under a shit ton of makeup. And I didn't know that until late. I found that out later when they started talking about the fact that Pearl was becoming a movie. And it was going to star Mia Goth. So basically what they did is they filmed both movies back to back. And they basically just had the actors film both movies while they had them, essentially. That's cool. So I'm excited for Pearl. And I really, really enjoyed X. And it's a very good film. So if you like slasher horror, I definitely recommend it. Next one I'll talk about is my number 3 on my list. I'm sorry, these last couple are movies. The next two movies are movies that Brandon has not seen, as far as I know. You haven't seen The Northman either, right? Okay, I'm going to make this quick fire, super fast. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Very, very good. It's a very good movie. Loved it. There's not a single thing I didn't like about it. I thought it was perfectly paced, perfectly told. I think it was really interesting because it was very emotionally resonant. I didn't cry or anything in this movie, but it was very emotionally resonant. Like, the story was interesting. Marcel is amazing. He has some great digs. Like, at one point he says to the movie is filmed in like a mockumentary style, and he says to the filmmaker, Have you ever like thought about, like, he basically tells him, like, maybe if you stop like looking at your camera all the time and trying to film everything, you should just like live life. Did you ever think about that? Living life? It was just something really funny. The way he says it is so funny to me. And like Grandma Connie, who is the grandmother of Marcel, amazing. Loved her character, and I just loved everything about this movie. So it's my number 3 on my list. It's so good. Northman, fantastic. Loved it. This one is also on my list. It is number 5. So The Northman, if you don't know, it's basically the story of, well, it's Hamlet, but it's the story that inspired Hamlet, about a character named Amleth. It is of Norwegian. It's like a Norse mythology like story, and essentially it tells like that exact same story. So it's pretty much the exact same type of movie. But really, really well done. Loved Alexander Skarsgård's performance. Best Nicole Kidman performance in a long time. Super well directed, super well acted. Amazing score. Brilliant across the board. So the next two are movies that we've both seen, and one of them is one that we both have a deep love for on almost every level. Okay, so let's talk about Nope. So Nope. You go ahead. I've talked a lot, so...
Yeah, Nope. In case you don't know, it's Jordan Peele's third film in his line of filmography, cinematography. The other two being Get Out and Us. So Nope, going into it, I think both of us, I can say, we had no idea. I think Jordan Peele did a great job in his marketing for the movie, in which he left a lot up for interpretation, a lot of vague details, and definitely delivered in terms of, like, when you finally got into the theaters in which you watched the movie, which is basically Daniel Kaluuya's character, what's his name?
Daniel Kaluuya's character? OJ.
Yeah, OJ, yes, because he's the junior. But OJ and his sister, Emerald, they're basically legacy horse trainers for the movie filming industry. So Emerald, she kind of did her own thing and left OJ to basically run the farm with his dad. And then one day in a freak accident, their dad died in like this weird freak thing where things fell from the sky. He got a key shot through his head and killed him.
A coin.
Yeah. A coin. Yes, that's right. It was a coin. It was.
I say that because I feel like that's something that's important in terms of like my interpretation of the film. But go on.
Okay, here. So that happens. OJ's just like left to deal with it. It's like transitions to 6 months later or something like that. It's like a brief time later. Emerald's back in their life. She's helping OJ with gigs, trying to get horses back on to like actual things, because now in the movie industry we don't really need practical effects or even real animals anymore for certain things, which kind of plays into it. But I'm going to skip ahead to essentially they're in financial troubles. OJ starts selling his horses to a nearby ranch run by Jupiter. He's a former child actor from a TV series, which is like, what's the name? The monkey. Crap.
Gordy's Home?
Basically, Gordy's Home. So basically, he was in an old TV show called Gordy's Home as a child actor, and he then reopened a ranch called Jupiter's Ranch. And now he's buying the horses from OJ and putting on some certain shows going on. Then weird things start happening around OJ's farm and whatnot. There's strange occurrences, electrical outages, and like horses going missing and running away from things happening. And it all culminates to this grand reveal where we find out at Jupiter's Ranch the reason he's been buying horses and been having late night shows that we could hear from across the like the fields and everything is because Jupe has been practicing a show in which an alien swoops up and abducts the horses. And we find this out in the most gruesome way possible. It shakes you to your core if you watch this and if you watch this in IMAX. The sound design is crazy in this movie. The visuals, like, this is I don't know if it's definitely not a low budget movie, but basically this is not a AAA title movie.
I think
that's like getting
now
hundreds of millions of dollars.
It was made with about like 20 to 25 million, I believe. Something like that. No, no. I'm sorry. I think it was more like 70-something million. Regardless, they would still be considered like mid budget. It's not even considered like a high budget film.
Yeah, and the visuals and everything else were fantastic in this. But essentially, it culminates in that we find out that the alien, it looks like a UFO, and it's not a UFO. We all think it's a UFO at first. And like, oh, okay, so like the grand reveal is like we're gonna see what these aliens look like. It's like, oh, nope, the UFO is an alien, and it's like,
yeah. So over the course of the film, like we watch the way that this thing like works, and it really creeps me out. But basically, it's a giant flying saucer that flies around, but it doesn't make any sounds as it's flying around, and it moves, but it doesn't move like a plane or any sort of flying locomotive would. It like what it will do is it will stop and hover, and then it will like fly and then change directions like on a dime and fly down and swoop up, and it does a bunch of stuff that like a normal locomotive would not. And we learn OJ, while observing the way that this thing operates, realizes this isn't a UFO. This isn't a plane. This isn't like a spaceship. It's an animal. Like we learn that this thing is an animal. It's not it's insane. And when that reveal happened, I was in awe because I was like, oh my god, that's crazy.
Yeah. There's just so much from this movie that like it's unlike any of his Jordan Peele's previous works either, because like Get Out, very on the nose, but executed well in the sense of that. Get Out, or Us, is very, it's very symbolic and a lot more whimsical almost.
I would say like
it's like very fantastic or fantastical, whatever you want to say. It's very like more delving into the cosmic or like the more like fantasy aspects of horror. And then
sorry, I was just gonna say I would definitely say that Us is his most, for lack of a better way of putting it, his most cryptic film. So I think that one's definitely the hardest to decipher. But yeah, exactly.
And then with Nope, it's basically Jaws, but with the fear of like basically instead of a shark, it's an alien that's like predating on you as if it was like a bird, but like a jellyfish bird. And it's like it's crazy how they really captured that sense of feeling like you are prey in its world essentially, and you're just like, oh, we are not the top dogs anymore, like as humans.
And I think what I thought was so fascinating about it was the fact that like I think that it was an amazing subversion on that type of genre, because I think that going into the movie, and I think Jordan Peele even knows this because of a certain scene that happens in the movie, like everyone is going in expecting like, oh, this is a movie about aliens. So we're expecting like, oh, there's like aliens that are like gonna come down and like attack us or something along those lines. And there's a scene in the movie where we see like what we think are aliens in a barn, and it's very suspenseful. That probably got the most visceral reaction out of most people in the theater in terms of like people screaming, people going like, oh no, like a lot of like audible reactions. But that's actually just like a fake out, because we learned that those are actually just kids in the costumes.
Which Daniel Kaluuya
punches a child in the face, and we don't talk about it, and it's so funny. But
it's okay, he's dead.
Oh no! But you're right. Oh god. See, I think that's the other thing about the scene is that even though it's not like anything that we've never seen before, but like the fact that they were able to. That was actually kind of bold. It's not just that it ate like people; it ate children. It ate the disabled. Like, it ate everyone.
No, it's just because, again, like, I love creature films, and the fact that I believed it was a creature in the way that they, like, really made a narrative of it. Like, they really made it, like, they named the alien Jean Jacket. They really made Jean Jacket feel like a character in the film. Like, as opposed to, like, Jaws. I mean, I'm gonna out myself here. I've never seen Jaws, but, like, with Jaws, it feels like, I'm sure, like, I've seen a lot of other, like, monster movies or creature films. I'm sure it felt like it just, like, almost like a puppet or something, like, that's just there. That's to be, like, there's a common enemy. With this, it feels like an actual animal. It feels like something that, like, oh, this is, like, a living being, especially because we transition from the vacuum scene, essentially, where all the people get sucked up, like the initial suck up, like from our perspective on ground level, to the internal workings of Jean Jacket. So, like, it's like a wide shot, and you just see the hole or the mouth, the opening, and everyone starts, like, filing in. And then it transitions into, like, its intestinal tracts, and then that's what really got me, because you just hear sloshing, you hear people, you hear the screams,
screaming. They're basically, like, being sucked into, like, a really tight tube, and you can tell, like, they're getting crushed.
Really claustrophobic.
Like, all you hear is just them screaming, and, like, a lot of, like, the sound design is wild. In some ways, it sounds like that sound when, like, you rub on a balloon. Like, it has, like, that sound to it, and, like, the texture of it looks almost, like, balloon-like, but you're watching them as they're basically just being digested and killed, and they're all just screaming, and it's intense. It's really visceral.
And that's the attention to detail, too, because we then realize that, like, how it digests is that it basically almost acts like a storm cloud, where it hovers over a certain area, and then it spews out all the inorganic material that it can't digest, almost like how, like, owls or other certain animals, like, have pellets, which is how actually OJ's and Emerald's dad died. Is that it basically was digesting and spat out a bunch of, like, junk it couldn't digest. But another character, I forget his name. I know his name is Brandon in real life.
Brandon Perea,
the actor's name. Yeah, Brandon Perea. Who was Angel, yes. So Angel and Emerald are inside the house, basically sheltering. And then it's Jean Jacket is spewing all the blood on top of the house, which, again, is a whole other sign. But when that happens, we hear screaming at first. But then once it makes the crunch sound, it actually, that's when the screaming stops. And that was another point in the movie. I was like, oh.
Yeah, and, like, we watch as it,
and then the blood falls, and then that's your, like,
it digests, like, organic material and then spews out all the inorganic material. But, like, I guess in this case, because it ate so many people at once, like, it also spews out, like, blood, and it's raining blood onto the house. Oh my god, it's so terrifying. And the fact that, like, this horror movie. So I found out that this is the first horror movie to ever be shot in IMAX, which I find that wild to think about. But I think it was really worth it. We saw it in IMAX, and the size of Jean Jacket, and watching just, like, this wide shot of the house, and seeing just how small the house is in comparison to how big Jean Jacket is, as it's spewing out all of this shit. Oh my god, it was terrifying. I thought it was so scary.
Yeah, it's almost ironic how the theme of the movie was about spectacle, and yet we were there watching a spectacle.
And
I was
just gonna say, like, I think that what I love so much about the film is that, like, it's so much about spectacle, it's so much about exploitation, and I think that, like, that stuff just goes so deep, and I think that's something that Jordan Peele is really good at. I think he's really good at kind of putting in little hints to like, the points of his films without it being, like, spelled out, or being, like, too on the nose. And I brought up, like, the coin, their father being killed by the coin, specifically because I feel like that is kind of like a reference to what is going on in the film, where the whole, like, motivations of the film is that OJ and Emerald, basically, to make money, they want to get footage of Jean Jacket, get footage or a picture of Jean Jacket to share with the world. Basically saying, like, we have proof of this thing that no one's ever seen before. We're capturing something brand new. And in a sense, I thought that was very interesting because, like, one plot point in the film is that you can't look at Jean Jacket. If you look up at Jean Jacket, it will basically react like any animal would, where like looking at it would be considered like a threat. And Jean Jacket really only attacks those that he deems as a threat, being anybody that looks directly in its eye, if you want to say. And so I thought that was very interesting because in a weird way, the whole point of the film is that they want to capture something to look at Jean Jacket. But in the case of the dad, he's looking up. Whether he saw Jean Jacket or not, he's looking up and he's killed by essentially money, by the very thing that ultimately everyone wants to get. In a way, that kind of goes back to Jupe being someone who ultimately wanted to make money by creating this show, and he's ultimately killed by that hubris. And I think that kind of all filters down throughout the film. Yeah, I just think that this is a really, really great film. Again, another one on my top 10. This is my number 4. And I loved it. And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I have nothing else to add. Yeah, it was just
Yeah.
great movie. Everyone should go
Also,
watch it.
one of the wildest creature designs in a movie ever. Who thought of that?
Oh yeah, whoever, like, concept artist or person who, if it was Jordan Peele who's just like, all right, this is what I want, because apparently during filming and everything, he was like trying to describe it to like, Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer, and they're just like, what? And he's like, just believe me, you're gonna have to like just pretend,
because
and just trust me, it's scary, because like it's almost like angel biblical, like Bible, like the what's it called, the visualization of it is very on the, like, what people describe angels to look like in the Bible. Like, it is, especially when it like reaches its like final form, and it's just like just such a floaty. Oh yeah, it's just crazy. And there's just so much I want to know more about Jean Jacket, like its origin story, and like why it's there, how did it get there, why did it transform into its final form, what is that green flashing thing, like
and like.
Yeah, just great design.
And it's just, because when it did that, I don't know, I guess I was just expecting something very simple. So in the film, like, Jean Jacket for a majority of the film looks like a flying saucer, a UFO, a traditional UFO. But then towards the end of the film, I guess in a way as like a threat response, kind of like how an animal will like kind of make itself look bigger to kind of like make you more like afraid of it, or make you like to kind of ward off predators. It unfolds itself and begins to look like almost like a giant jellyfish balloon looking thing with a giant like emerald looking eye. And it also kind of looks like the iris of a camera. And it like, and basically to further that threat response, basically that eye unfolds and like does that over and over again to create like this big diamond shape on the front of it. And it also moves in like a way that it's not supposed to be of this world. It's like its eye is on like one side of it, and it can move the eye from one side of it, like close itself and then open the eye on the back of it. It's so weird. It's such a strange design, but I thought it was so interesting that they came up with that. And I think I had heard somewhere that like that part of the inspiration was jellyfish. Like they had talked to like some sort of like aeronautics expert or something to kind of help with the design of the creature. So because that was my initial reaction. I thought it looked like a giant jellyfish to a certain extent, but like it's crazy. And I think I love that. I just on the level of like just the originality of the film, I think I really, really appreciated. And that's something that we don't really see in many films. So I loved it. So yeah.
Yeah. And then from one spectacle to my number one spectacle of the year, my favorite movie of the year. It's everything, everywhere, all at once. Everyone deserves all the nominations, all the awards. Oscars 2023 is going to be nothing but EEAO. Yep. Nothing but this movie. And it better be. Or I'm writing. I'm going to, like, when we do our ballots and we start, like, I'm going to put it for everything. I don't care.
I mean, I'm going to agree with you. This movie is so fucking good. And I still am not entirely sure how they pulled this movie the fuck off. I don't understand how it works. Because it shouldn't.
And it feels like it shouldn't, yeah. And this is, like, one of the movies where you say like you don't want the long runtime. This is a 2 hour 30 minute. I think it's 2 hour and a half, 2.5 hours.
It's between 2:10 and 2.5. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's on the longer-ish side. We'll say it's a mid movie. It's like mid-length movie, not mid as in like mid-tier. Like no. This is top tier. This is yeah. I think we should just skip the plot in terms of like recapping that. Let's just talk about what we feel about the movie, what was the highlights and the great things that really touched upon it. And I think it all goes with the writing, because this role, although originally meant for Jackie Chan, Michelle Yeoh killed it and made it her own, really portraying Evelyn as this mother who's just trying to survive in life and who wants to feeling a success, because her whole life she felt like a failure, and in fact she's the worst version of herself across every single universe possible, and it's because she's failed at everything means that she has the most potential to succeed. And I thought that was, first of all, great writing on their hand to say that, but like, yeah, she just really embodies that person that I think we all feel like at times, where it's just like, is this really the best version of me? Is this really all that I have? That I'm just a laundromat owner. I'm in a loveless marriage almost. I mean, on her side, she could care less. But like Waymond, her husband, he's in a loveless marriage. Even though he's the happy-go-lucky one. He's the one that like is trying to find all the positivities in life, regardless of being audited and like possibly losing their home and their jobs and their source of everything. And then Evelyn and Waymond's daughter Joy, basically not being accepted and having again a generational language barrier difference, being love language and not feeling understood and feeling like again you don't have a purpose or you don't have a place in the world, and that all culminating all together in this basically family movie. Even though you probably shouldn't take your kids to see this movie if they're below the ages of 10.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you how to raise your kids.
Explicit, there are a few things
this is an accessible movie. This is a highly accessible movie.
Yes. This is also my number one of the year. And it's slowly making its way up on my like favorites of all time. I don't even know where to start. So, okay. I think that, yes, the writing is super strong here. And I think that I find it very impressive that this film was directed by the Daniels. Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, who prior to this had made a film called Swiss Army Man. And they're probably also really well known for the music video for Turned Down for What? From like 2013 or something like that. And this film is very much like their style. This movie is a lot. There's a lot going on. Like within the first 5 seconds, they're literally like foot slammed down on the pedal. We're going. Like we are immediately introduced to Evelyn, Waymond, Joy, Gong Gong, Becky, Jenny Slate. Like we're immediately introduced to all these different characters.
Yeah.
And the way that we are introduced to them, like we learn so much about them just through the interaction with one another, their dynamics, the way that they talk to one another. And it's very interesting because as the film goes along, like the movie just does not stop. There's just so much shit happening from beginning to end. And it does such a great job at making something so big and so unwieldy as the multiverse, because this is a multiverse movie, turning it into something that is so personal and accessible. And something that is so emotionally resonant. I think you brought up like the being the worst version of yourself and thus having the most potential as like a glass half empty, glass half full kind of ideology. But I just love the way that that Joy, or Jobu Tupaki, the way that her character is rendered and the way that she has this nihilism. I just love how the film really takes the time to explore having this sense of nihilism about life, about everything, and then kind of turning on its head and turning into something more positive and something more different. And in a sense, again, like I said, this movie should not work because this is also a movie this is a movie that ultimately concludes with characters learning to understand one another, because a large portion of this movie is about miscommunication, and it's about characters understanding like what they want, who they are, and being happy with what they have in life. But it's also a film where we watch people slap hot dog fingers on their thighs, and we watch
and shove it into each other's
and
mouths
we watch
and have ketchup and mustard spray on each other's
it's so
faces.
gross. But then we also see this is a movie that has like a Ratatouille riff in Raccacoonie. This is a movie where we watch two rocks have a conversation with one another
about the existentialism of life and feeling and having basically a nihilistic
that
conversation.
every new discovery makes us feel like smaller pieces of shit. Like it's wild. But somehow the Daniels, as well as all the actors, like Michelle Yeoh,
made me want to do laundry.
I would have been happy doing laundry and taxes with you. Amazing. And like the fact that the Daniels, Michelle Yeoh, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ke Huy Quan, Stephanie Sue, James Hong, Jenny Slate. The fact that everyone in this film was so game, and the fact that this movie is a small film. I think it was only made with like a $20 million budget. They were able to make something so
I think
grand.
This was 25. This is 25
this is
million.
the 25 million one. I got it confused with Nope, but they made it something that's so grand and so emotionally resonant. And I just love that. And just like, even if it wasn't, because going into this movie, I just thought it was going to be like a fun action movie. I was not expecting this movie about existential dread, generational trauma, like, but it just all comes together so well, and it works so well, and it's just so good.
Yeah. Even the little things like costume design and makeup, like that's stuff I don't usually care about or like even would recognize, but like the fact that like they went all out with Stephanie Sue's character with Joy, being basically an omnipotent being, and conjuring these ridiculous outfits, it's just wow, it's just stunning to look at. Like, this is such a visually appealing movie to watch at every single frame. There was like even one scene where it's like basically it's a stop motion the way they had to do it, but it's like Evelyn sitting in a spinny chair as she's in the IRS building, and she basically gets sucked into a closet, and it's like just the way that it's like a zoom out and like panning effect, and it was just everything just captures your attention. The way that they creatively think of new ways for them to verse jump, basically that's like their way of acquiring abilities from their multiversal counterparts into the current universe that they're in. Movie. I can't get enough of it. I know I've only seen it twice compared to your 8 or 9 times.
Why'd you expose me like that?
Hey, no, I wish I had that the same drive to watch it as many times. I definitely want to. I just haven't. I want to. I want to share everyone this movie, and there's so many people that love this movie to a absurd degree that I've heard that they're just like, yeah, I'm using this as like a litmus test now, where it's like if they don't like this movie, then we have problems, and I'm just like, I wouldn't do that, but fair, I understand, because this movie just like. I don't see how a person could dislike this movie. Even if it's like not your cup of tea, there's something in this movie for you, and there's something like thematically that you're going to relate to.
And like as far as like people not liking the movie, the major flaw that I've heard from most people as far as their feelings about the film overall has to do with that fast-paced nature of it. Because I am not exaggerating when I say this movie is super fast. Like, things are happening like so quickly, and in a way, the reason for that is because you're basically being put into the head of specifically Michelle Yeoh's character Evelyn, where like she's moving at like a mile a minute. She is like, oh, we need to do taxes, but also laundry, but also gong gong, but then also this, but then also that. Like, she's moving around so quickly, and
but to reflect her character,
and so like those things. I have heard people saying like those things basically caused them to kind of disconnect from it because they didn't really get time to like really breathe in the film. But I kind of liked that fast-paced nature of it.
Oh,
because as it goes along, I kind of break this movie up into two parts, as it does itself. The movie opens with, or not opens with, but rather it has 3 chapters, if you will. Part 1 being everything, part 2 being everywhere, and part 3 being all at once. And part 1, everything, feels like the part of the film that is the most exposition. Almost all the dialogue that is shared in this part of the film is exposition. We learn about the characters, we learn about the motivations, we learn about the threat that's going on with Jobu Tupaki. We understand more about like what is actually going on in terms of like why is Evelyn's husband changing every 5 seconds? Why is like the IRS agents acting weird? Like why are all these things going down like this? And all of that is explained in the first part. And then when we get to part 2, everywhere, that's the part where we really start to explore, well, what does it really mean to be a part of the grander multiverse? What does it mean? Because essentially, Jobu Tupaki, her character, her whole thing is that she is able to experience every multiverse, every universe, every possibility, everything, all at once, at the same time. And ultimately, the film builds up to Evelyn learning how to essentially harness that same ability. But through this crazy, for lack of a way of putting it, premise, it becomes about what the universe means, and ultimately, like, because in a sense nothing matters because of the way the universes operate, in a sense, like, the things that make the most sense to you matter. And I think that is something that I don't think any film would ever even think to come up with. We talked about Multiverse of Madness also, and Multiverse of Madness does not even come close to the shit this movie does, and somehow still manages to make emotionally resonant. This is a movie where Evelyn learns how to fight with just her pinkies. She hits people with her pinkies, and there's a sonic boom. And yet, but she's like
using that Kung Fu Panda move.
Yep. Like
Kadoosh.
we watch as the way that all these different multiverses operate. We watch how every world is different, but yet how every possibility ultimately like changes everything across the entire multiverse. But in Doctor Strange, like, we just see, oh, red means go.
Or this is a universe where everyone's pain.
Like, it doesn't. It's a film that ultimately marketed itself on, this is a movie, the multiverse of madness, and yet we got nothing in comparison to what Everything Everywhere did.
We stay in one universe.
Pretty much.
Well, two universes. They focus on the main universe, and then they focus on this other one where Wanda has kids, which is like, there's other universes where your kids
around,
are there. But
this movie really goes for it. It goes for the weirdness of the multiverse.
Sausage fingers. Where the apes with the sausage fingers killed the apes with the regular hands, and they
and we
thrived.
Got a 2001 reference where we watch them murder the other tribe of human, I guess.
Regular hand.
And the movie really goes there with everything, but it also ultimately just gets into the emotions of it all. I think one thing I love so much about the film is that there is a ultimately the movie bounces back and forth between two main universes. One universe is is basically what's happening plot-wise. Jobu Tupaki, there's like fighting, people are trying to kill Evelyn or stop Evelyn from doing XYZ. But then there's another universe in which Evelyn goes home with her husband and her daughter, and she is ultimately trying to have a party at the laundromat that they own. And it bounces mainly between those two universes while also sprinkling in all these other universes that are going on, where all this stuff is going on. What we watch is Evelyn ultimately, because of understanding what's going on in each universe, how she ultimately changes and has like her character arc. One big arc that I love so much is that her husband, Wayman, played by Keo Kwan, she sees him as being like almost too nice for his own good. One thing that she says is the tax lady played by Jamie Lee Curtis, she puts a lien on our property, and what does your dad do? He takes her cookies. Waymond gives her cookies, and she basically is like, he's like a dumbass, like he doesn't get it. But ultimately, his kindness is what fixes everything, and through that, she learns not only how to ultimately fight this battle between her and Jobu Tupaki, or her own daughter, but also learns to understand that Waymond is not the person that she thinks he is, that she doesn't give him enough credit, and that ultimately she learns to appreciate him for who he is. And I think that is something that is amazing to be putting in a film like this. So yeah. Do you have anything else to add? I think I just love this movie. That's basically what it comes down to.
I love this movie too. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Yep.
I've never left a movie theater feeling so much joy, and like, not fulfillment, but like that's how joyous I felt, was that sense of like, I'm like, it's like after eating like a very good meal, like, and you just feel full. That's what I felt when I watched this movie. I was just like, I'm content, but I'm also super happy, and I want other people to enjoy the experience I just had. So just like that, I want to share it. I want to, like a restaurant, be like, hey, have you been to this restaurant? You ever had this food? Be like, you gotta go watch Everything Everywhere.
And there's so many other things we didn't even get a chance to talk about. We didn't talk about like the bagel, which is kind of like the main threat in the film.
That's like the main thing.
Like the fact this is a movie where an everything bagel is the main threat. This is a movie where literally Jobu dances somebody to death. Like, she danced somebody to death. She turned somebody into confetti. Like,
where someone's way of verse jumping was to shove a giant trophy up their butt that resembled a butt plug.
The fact that the fact that a woman uses her dog as a hammer. As like a giant, like a ball and a chain, but uses her dog as a ball on a chain.
Yeah, ball and chain. Yeah,
like, this movie is crazy, but it's so good. And when the Oscars come around, I really do hope this is not one that's overlooked. I get that it's weird, and it's not the type of thing that Oscar would go for, especially considering the demographics. But it's so good, and it's so universally praised that I'm really hoping that it gets there. And I think that, if anything, Michelle Yeoh. Realistically, Michelle Yeoh, Ke Huy Quan, and Stephanie Hsu, give them nominations immediately. I swear to God, if any one of them is left out, I'm going to be so upset, because all three of them give not just great performances, but like masterclass performances in a movie that is so full of ridiculousness. They anchor this movie so well. And I think Michelle Yeoh's performance is so reactionary. She basically is forced to respond to all the shit that's going on in front of her, but she does it so well, and it gets to the point where you really feel like everything that's happening is like legit. Like, you feel the weight of what's happening. Stephanie Hsu's character, Joy, she is immaculate in this movie, and I love specifically the ending. Towards the end, when we actually get the final confrontation between Evelyn and Joy, she is amazing. And like, she has like this presence, this attitude about her. The way that she says things is hilarious. Like, she's like, she says like, I don't really think you understand what that word means. And the way she says it is just so full of just like attitude. Like, she's killing it. And Ke Huy Quan, for someone who hasn't been in a movie in so long, he is so good in this movie playing. He's so great at like, he ultimately made you believe that he was like 3 or 4 different characters. And he pulled it off effortlessly. Like, whenever he was Alpha Waymond, when he changed from Waymond to Alpha Waymond, it was seamless. When he was the Waymond in like the Wong Kar-wai-esque universe where Michelle Yeoh is Michelle Yeoh, he's so good in that scene. And like, I don't know, the three of them, just give them all the awards. Give everyone the awards: best film editing, best direction, best screenplay. All of it. Like, it deserves everything. Costume design, like, it deserves it.
Yep. All of it.
So yeah. So yeah, this was a longer episode than usual, but there was a lot of movies that we saw, a lot of things to talk about. But yeah, if there's one takeaway from this whole thing, you heard all the recommendations, but if anything, Watch Everything Everywhere All at Once immediately. Like, I don't care if you have to buy it.
Now.
Like, watch it now, immediately, now. And if
Do
you
it.
are, and if
Spend that
you
money.
just so happen to be an Academy member who's listening to this, first off, share, because we would love for that. We would love for that clout. But also, vote for the movie. Goddammit. Okay, so thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, thanks for listening. You've listened to this episode of the Brandon Darrell Experience with me, one of your hosts, Brandon.
And I'm Daryl. And we will be again, keep up with that bi-weekly schedule. So next time we're going to be talking about body image. It's going to be a very interesting topic. But we're going to get more detailed in there, but a lot of it's going to be about media, about the way in which body image like plays a role in our culture and our society, and and of course you can find us on all the social medias. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube, and you can follow us on all social medias at the BDE Pod. And yeah,
and then until next time, we'll see you then.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.